Coming up this morning on the Dattitude podcast, on this show, we almost always say, forget about the gossip, the word of the almighty social media, even scoop from players and coaches themselves. Rather, we say, follow the word of the people who make the money. Who makes more money than the people of Las Vegas, Nevada? Well, when it comes to all of those aforementioned things, oddly, weirdly, almost to the level of stinky, the rumor mill and the odds makers agree. The New Orleans Saints will take a quarterback with their first round pick in next week's NFL draft. And with all the rumors surrounding Derek Carr and his supposed all of a sudden bum shoulder, it makes complete sense to believe the noise. So why am I having trouble following in lockstep? Why do I not believe all these people who are usually so believable? Maybe because something ain't right. Maybe it's because my spidey sense is flashing orange and blue. Maybe it's because no matter how much the average Joe Houdat hates Derek Carr more than they hate the Atlanta Falcons, common sense says the Saints would never let the world know what they're up to. Besides that, it just doesn't make sense. None of it does. But today, maybe we can make a little sense of it with a respected member of the local media and friend of the show. WWL-TV sports director Doug Mouton will be here to, I'm guessing, tell me I'm wrong. And maybe I will start to fall in line, or maybe I won't. Either way, it should be fun. And, in the last word today, we'll offer salute to maybe the best right tackle ever to suit up in black and gold, as Ryan Ramczyk told the Who Dat Nation what we've already known for many months, but maybe didn't want to believe. He's retiring. And he reminded us all of the offensive line of Drew Brees. Yeah, it ain't there no more. All right, we set the record for the longest open in the history of this show, and there's nothing else to do but cue the music.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, Dattitude family? You all in for a quarterback at number 9? How about number 40? I don't know. We are going to hear from you very shortly. We got a lot to talk about this morning. We're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to Doug Mouton. We're going to talk to everybody. But first, I have to tell you that this is Dattitude, episode number 363, presented by Evangeline Securities for a Friday, April the 18th, 2025. Good Friday. May all of you heathens go to church this weekend and save that hamburger till tomorrow. Who am I kidding? I am your host, Jim Derry, 34 and a half years in the New Orleans sports media scene, and I thank you, as always, for being a part of the ever-growing Dattitude family. You know how to be a part of the show. Type in your comment, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook. We will show it here. We will talk about it. We will discuss it. Maybe. Probably. Who knows? But type it in. We'll see what happens. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. That's where all the family members live. That's where you'll always know when we're going the air live, which is normally every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. We did not go in the air live this Wednesday. I was going to try to do a show yesterday. Most of you know, wifey had surgery. Let's just say that everything to this point has gone as well as it possibly could have gone. So thank you for all your prayers. So far, they are working, and let's hope it stays that way. So sorry we missed the show Wednesday. We have got a jam-packed week and a half for you coming up. Actually, week, I guess. Tell you about that in a minute. Today's show, Doug Mouton will be on about 11:25, 11:30, somewhere around there, because we have a lot to talk about before we even get started with Doug. I'm going to ask Doug the obvious, okay? I mean, the question of the day, it's the same question we've been having. All the talk about Derek Carr. Does this force the Saints' hand? Okay, are all these rumors true? All the rumors of quarterback in the first round, true. I have a couple of little snippets, I guess, short takes from all over the place this morning. We're going to talk about that before Doug even comes on at 11, Again, 11:25, 11:30 or so. But again, jam-packed. And the man versus machine segment. Hey, man won. Man won. Gabe isn't here today, but he did send his pick, so he will be man. Man and machine won on Monday. They're going to try it again with an NBA pick. That's coming up towards the end of the show. And then the last word today is a tribute. That's not just a tribute to Ryan Ramczyk. We will talk about Ryan Ramczyk in the last word today. If you have something you want to say about Ryan Ramczyk, feel free. But I have more than just a tribute to Ryan Ramczyk. He kind of represents the end of an era, doesn't he? Anyway, that's the last word today. That's coming up at the end of the show. Again, first we got a lot of stuff to get to before then. Program a note: Doug Mouton today. How about this until we get to the draft? Doug Mouton today. Mike Detillier will be here on Monday. It's not Mono Monday. We will have plenty of time for y'all to talk, so don't worry. Even though it's not technically Mono Monday, we will have plenty of time for you, my Dattitude family, to talk. So Mike is coming on Monday to talk about his draft list. I know what he thinks about quarterback. Eric Asher will be our guest on Wednesday inside New Orleans. He's letting me be on his show. I guest hosted Monday. He's coming on our show Wednesday. And there's no show next Friday, which is the day after the first round. However, it's going to be an all-day Dattitude basically on Thursday. Okay. So not only do we have our 5-hour live NFL draft show, which will be broadcast here on this Dattitude YouTube channel and on the NOLA Saints Insider YouTube page, but we will have a mock draft with Zach Ewing, with Gabe Henderson on Thursday morning. So instead of a Friday morning show, we're going to do a Thursday morning show. The morning of the draft, we're going to do a mock draft. How it's going to work? We're going to just draft. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. Who's going to get the first pick, second pick, third pick? I don't know, but I'm just saying the person who runs this show is probably going to rig it so the host gets the 9th pick. Probably. No spoiler alerts, but that's probably what's going to happen. So a lot of stuff coming up. Be a very busy less than a week now. 6 days away to the draft. So we have plenty of shows today. We got Monday, we got Wednesday, we got Thursday, we got live draft on Thursday night. That should be a lot of fun. All right. Before we get to the Saints, I wanted to just briefly, and you see it in the today's show, what's upcoming. Talk about Aaron Rodgers for just a sec. And we got comments, I know, so we're going to get to the comments too. Did y'all see Aaron Rodgers and Pat McAfee? If there's anyone who's even contemplating wanting Aaron Rodgers, it's not going to happen anyway. I'd be shocked. I mean, at this point, I don't even know what I'd be shocked about anymore. But I would say I'll be shocked if Aaron Rodgers is a Saint. I think he's just look. Here, I got to read this for you. This came from, I like to read is this The Athletic or is this is The Athletic Pulse, which sends out a newsletter every morning. I get a couple different ones, but this is the one that I like the most. And I'm going to quote from the Athletic Pulse's newsletter that I got this morning. Rodgers unloads on Jets and Aaron Glenn. This is why you don't want someone like this here, okay? Rodgers lamented that he, quote, flew across the country on his own dime. Woo! Wow. Spend your own money. Good for you. To meet with new coach Aaron Glenn, expecting a conversation about his future, only to be quickly told New York was moving on in another direction at quarterback. Quote, he says, I felt there wasn't an ample amount of respect in that meeting. You're 41 years old, dude. You led the Jets to another crappy season. What do you want? Don't need that here. Don't want that here. Y'all know what I feel about. We're going to get into the whole quarterback thing. Obviously, that's what today's show is about. But I would rather Spencer Rattler. I would rather Shedeur Sanders. I would rather Jaxson Dart. I would rather Derek Carr. I would rather Aaron Rodgers would be the last thing I'd want. Don't need that here. All right, going to get to the comments just a minute. Before we do that, let me tell you about our friends at Evangeline Securities. Of course, we know about Evangeline Securities, but for those who are new, you got to hear about it anyway. You got to know about Evangeline Securities. Of course, they're a company that can help you decide if they're the right time to sell your family-run or privately held business. But just as importantly, and maybe even more importantly, they can help you figure out what that business is worth. If that's you or someone you know, it's time to reach out to Evangeline's founding and managing partners, Nick Braden and Ron Email. They will start by scheduling a complimentary valuation from their offices either on Poydras Street or in Lafayette. And from there, you will begin you will be well informed to begin to make the decision on if you decide to proceed. The odds that you are inspired about your future when you leave Evangeline are even higher than the Saints drafting Shedeur Sanders or Jaxson Dart. How about that? And what happens after that? We'll fill you in more later in the show. In the meantime, you can check them out at www.evangelinesecurities.com. All right, let's get to some of the comments. Who is here this morning? Scott J., good morning. Hope all went well Wednesday. As I said, thank you for the prayers. Yes, so far so good. Got one more hurdle. So far so good. Brian S. Steve, good morning, Dat Nation. Charles Mangus, happy Good Friday. Good morning. Thank you for the sentiments. Chad Gage, good morning all. Brian, who dat? Dattitudes on this Good Friday. Absolutely. Phil Mariandi, good morning from Texas. Well, welcome, you Texan. Who dat Texans? Brian S. Steve, yep, we're going to get to this in the last word. Ramczyk was never coming back. Don't believe the Carr news. I believe it's a smoke screen, and Carr will play for the Saints in 2025. I agree with you, Brian. A good friend of mine who we like to chat about the quarterback situation on occasion. Saw him Monday night. Hadn't seen him in a couple weeks. So who's going to play quarterback for the New Orleans Saints? My answer is Derek Carr. And I like it. Recent report, Saints not interested in Shedeur Sanders. That's interesting you say that. To show you how there are so many just ridiculous. I don't know what to believe. You know what? I don't believe any of them. I don't think anybody knows anything. That's a whole difference. Getting into that. David Lee Prater. It's a lot of fleur-de-lis, my friend. Like it. Chad Gage, get right to it. No quarterback in the first round, please. Second round, maybe. But the more I watched McCord or Woods, I feel as if they are capable as the top four. I'm just a poor fan and not a guru. Yeah. I don't think the regular average Joe fan is on the same page as you. Brian Cabot says, not a quarterback at number 9. I've been a entrenched guy since before the start of the 2024 season. I'm completely entrenched in that position. John Carter, good morning. And yes, Brian, smash that like button. I don't know why they say it helps, but they, whoever they is, or they are, they is, they are, whatever, they say it helps. Just, it doesn't hurt, right? Just do it with your thumb. You don't have to really smash it. You can just touch it. It's all good. Booker, thank you for the prayers. Appreciate it, my friend. Thank you, Brian. KD Brown, did I eat crow yet? Denying Carr wanted out of New Orleans. Oh, well, Nick Underhill said it. Well, then it's got to be true. If Nick Underhill said it, it's got to be true. If Diana Rossini said it, it's got to be true. No, I'm eating crow. My record for eating crow po' boys on this show is still perfect. I have yet to have to eat a crow po' boy. It's still in the freezer. It's right next to me, right here. It's getting a little freezer burn. It's been in there so long. So the answer is no. We don't know the answer to any of this crap. We're getting to it. You're getting ahead of me. Nola Man, good morning. Do you think if Will Johnson is there, they take him, even though I still like a right tackle to help build in the trenches, maybe trade back to 31 and 32? I hate to say get Milroe. I'm going to show you some odds in just a minute. Brian, please no Aaron Rodgers. Who dat, Daddy? Good morning. Shedeur Watch does continue. It sure does. Hakeem's here. What's going on, big dog? Dylan Smith. Good morning, my Who Dat family, and hoping everyone is having a good Friday. Happy Easter all. Absolutely. My sentiments exactly. Hakeem, Carr is parked for the year. See? We're through what? 20 comments, and we've got like the people are all over the place. Some saying Carr is going to start. Some say now Carr is parked for the year. We got car insurance. Who knows the answer? No one knows the answer. Mark Satanovich just got his rat jersey. Well, you know, they don't make those in my size, buddy. Trish Reinhardt. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. KD Brown. Oh, I get it. I'm never wrong. Not on this show, I ain't. I mean, when I get off the show and walk back into the house, I'll be wrong a dozen ways to Sunday. But not on this show. You're right. It's my show. I'm not wrong. I'm just saying, go back and find where I was wrong. If you find where I was wrong and you can prove it, you got receipts to show it, I'll show it here. I'll be the first one to tell you I'm wrong when I'm wrong. Nola Man says, give me that James Brown po' boy from Parkway, barbecue beef with fried shrimp. No barbecue beef today, buddy. Good Friday. Mark, we're not going to talk too much about Joe Dumars. We'll bring it up with my guest this morning, Doug Mouton, who's in the green room already. We'll bring him on in just a minute. But we're not going to spend a lot of time. In fact, very little time talking about the Pelicans. Aaron Smith says they need running back to get help. Don't deny that. I don't think they're going to do it in the first round, but I absolutely think they would draft a running back fairly early in this draft. That's my opinion. James Plummer, I'm not sure exactly what this means, but okay, Taysom. Dustin, they call the Saints Carr situation a good old-fashioned standoff. I don't know what's true and what's not true. I don't know what's true and what's not true. What is true? What can we believe? What do we not believe? Taylor DeMarco, the Saints don't plan on exercising the 5th-year option on Penning. OT will be the pick at number 9. I don't know how else to say this, but the way I've been saying it. Trevor Penning's not the answer at right tackle. He was fine last year because you didn't have a choice. You went 5-12. No different story. Couple more here before I bring in Doug. JC, hello. Welcome from Denver. Sure, it's beautiful in Denver this time of year. Mark says Derek Carr is a new YouTube channel. We talked about it on the show plenty. I mean, I'm just saying, does somebody with a bum shoulder, is he talking like this? You know, he has his own YouTube channel that he just started, him and his brother. They've got like no views. I'm not joking. This show, my Wednesday show, has more views currently than his podcast had, his first podcast had with him and his brother. You would think that he would want to, if he was going to make his podcast be something that people were going to pay attention to it, you would think he would talk about his shoulder on the podcast if it was a bum shoulder, right? Doesn't that make sense? Get people to watch it. But no one's watching it. I'm having a hard time taking up for any. I mean, none of this, not only does none of this make sense, it's just flat out weird. Earl's Pick says, I can't believe the Saints have ever spoken about the Carr issue. Of course they have. JC says it's snowing in Denver. Yeah. Wow, apathy. You draft quarterback in round 2, a jump back in the late first. You let Carr sit behind in Fresno and then try to trade him. That's not going to happen. If he's here in uniform, he ain't sitting, okay? If Derek Carr is, I'm not saying he's, at this point, I don't know what to believe. Maybe he won't be here. Maybe he'll pull a Bobby Abear. Maybe he'll sit out. I don't know what it's going to happen. But he's not, if he's in uniform, he's going to play, he's going to start. That's just the way that it is. But Cam, I would love Will Campbell at number 9. So would I. You would like Will Johnson, number 9. I'm going to tell you why that's probably not going to happen if you believe the odds people. Lewis Jacobson says you got to start up front. We've been preaching about that for forever. Charles says you can hear Carr bought a $500,000 Rolls Royce electric car. Why is it ridiculous? And see, this is where I don't get, like, all the haters, Derek Carr. Would you go and say it's ridiculous if Cam Jordan went and bought a $500,000 Rolls Royce? No, you wouldn't. You just hate Derek Carr. Who gives a shit that he bought a $500,000? Who cares? I mean, I don't really want to see him talking about it. I'm not going to go. I did try to watch the video. I watched about 3 minutes. I'm like, I can't watch this. Just saying. Taylor DeMarco. Everyone seems to forget Carr quit on his Raiders his last year. Literally ghosted the franchise the last month of the season. He didn't ghost the team. They sat him because Josh McDaniels is a dumbass. You're way out of line there. I'm not taking up for Derek Carr because, look, I got a lot of issues with Derek Carr right now. We can get into them very soon. Big Sean says Carr is gone. Face as good as gone. Face it. I ain't facing Jack. I'll believe it when I see it. We got to get to Doug here in just a minute. So just a couple more. Who dat daddy? Been telling you that he doesn't want to be there. They will cut him post June 1st. That's why he's pissed. I don't believe that. Why would he be pissed anyway? He's gonna get paid. He ain't pissed. I promise you. He ain't pissed. Last one here before we get to Doug. Armand Membu at number 9. If he's still there, his over under right now is like 6.5, which means he'll probably be gone. I'm starting to think that I think Campbell and Membu might both be gone. We still got for 6 days of the draft, and who knows what will happen before then, but we'll see. Douglas Mouton. Good morning. Welcome,
hey, Derek.
Welcome back to the Dattitude podcast. I believe your first jaunt into season number 5. So,
wait, when did we turn the clock on season 5?
March the 4th or something.
Yeah, probably is my first time. Congratulations, season 5. That's impressive.
Season 5, yeah.
I mean, you have at least some audience.
Some.
Yeah.
Most of them not agreeing with me, but
who cares?
Exactly.
If you're in season 5, you're doing something right. Congratulations, my friend.
If I make it to season 6, we'll have a party. All right.
Take them one at a time. That's all you can do.
One at a time. All right.
You can say one season at a time. I'm saying one show at a time. All right. Nobody wants to hear this. What do you got? Because this is getting fun right now.
It's so. Here's my problem with the ridiculousness of our business. Okay, the business that we work in. Okay, and it's not everybody just wants to believe anything that just comes out. I don't care. Oh, you got to believe it. Diana Rossini said it, or you got to believe it. Ian Rappaport said it, or you got to believe it. God forbid, Nick Underhill said it. Oh, it's got to be true then. I'm just saying, why do we just automatically believe stuff that? Remember the day you and I are both old enough to remember the days of we had bosses that if I've heard such and such. Well, you better get it from 2 sources.
Oh, of course.
I mean, and it's not like that anymore. We're just believing people on social media now.
Yeah, no, right. And sometimes we're believing fake accounts. I can't tell you how many times friends of mine send me fake accounts. Oh my God, can you believe this? And I'll say, okay, that's Adam Schefter's. That's not the same guy. Yes, I would agree 100%. And look, the one thing, because I've heard you the last few minutes, the one thing I think that makes this week so much fun is that we really don't know exactly what to believe. And that is beautiful.
We don't.
And I'll say this too, for the last 20 years, we had really gotten to know this organization to the point that, look, the year they took Penning and Olave, the week before the draft, we're all saying they need a tackle and a wide receiver. Everybody predicted Brian Brzee. There have been so many times when it has been so easy to, if not pick the exact person, but to pick where they were going and the positions and what they needed. The fact is, right now, it is fun as hell because it's a whole different coaching staff, which is going to have a different influence, even though it's the same scouting staff. And we don't know what they really think about a lot of things. And I also believe this as the baseline. This is a 2-year rebuild. It's not a 1-year rebuild. And you can say, and I agree with you, they have to rebuild the trenches and offensive lines on the table. But the fact is they're building for 26. So if you couldn't feel that need this year, that's okay, because this is a 2-year plan. And the fact is they have about 20 needs across the board. Okay, that's a little bit of an example.
It's not really.
They have at least 8 that they really need that you could say, okay, if they took that, okay, you know what, they need that. And all these things they need, they're not going to get them all. So the fact is they can cherry pick a little bit, and that opens up literally everything. At number 9, it literally could be, there's at least 9 different options at number 9 that you could absolutely make a legitimate case for and not be ridiculous and not be reaching. And that, just to start with, that's what makes this year, I think, the most fun draft maybe in a decade.
That leads into what was really going to be my first question, because you basically, it's perfect. We didn't even talk about this, but we segued into what my first real question is. By the way, David Mobley says it's a 3-year rebuild.
Okay. All right.
You got a couple hellos.
I'm just saying it's not happening this year. David and I agree. You could argue if you want, but we're on the same page. The fact is, you're not competing for a Super Bowl this year. You want to be as good as you can be, but the fact is, you don't want to sacrifice building for a Super Bowl in 2 or 3 years to try to win a few games this year. You're on a long-term rebuild, and I think everybody gets that.
I don't disagree, but you can still try to win during the rebuild. However, all that being said, by the way,
you're getting paid to try to win during the rebuild. Yes.
By the way, a few comments in the stream. I'm just not going through this again. I don't give a rat's ass that Derek Carr bought a $500,000 car. So Drew Brees would never. You don't know what Drew Brees would splurge on, or whoever. Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara's got probably $1 million necklace that he wears around his neck. Don't get out of here. People buy whatever they want.
$50 a year. I don't know what the heck I would buy, but it would probably
exactly. If you got $50 million in the bank and your kids have enough money to live off of the rest of their lives, besides the fact that you have enough, I don't care what you spend your money on. Just don't hate on somebody because they're buying a $500,000 Rolls Royce. I mean, I just don't want to listen to them talking about it. Okay, that's a completely different story.
No, we are 100% in agreement on that one.
I mean, people get pissed about the dumbest crap. Anyway, all right. So here's my original question that it's taken me 7 minutes to get to. Do you believe all the Saints talk about drafting a quarterback? Because for the first, basically the first time as long as I can remember, they would why would they tell the world what they're doing? They never do that. So why is all this coming out? It's just got to be a smokescreen. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. And now we're going to get to odds after you answer this question, but it just doesn't make any sense to me that they're going to actually draft a quarterback here.
Yeah, and when you say they allow this to get out, I just think they're doing what they're doing, and people are just running with whatever.
It's what they've done for 20 years.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what I do believe about the quarterback position. That I do not believe Jake Haener is an NFL quarterback.
For sure, 100%.
Yeah. Let me finish the thought, if you don't mind. It's therefore, and I believe Kellen Moore is going to. This sounds mean, and I hate to be mean, but I think Kellen Moore is going to show up at OTAs and go, "Who is this guy?" And once he sees him on a football field. Okay, so what that means is, and I think right now they are open-ended about Spencer Rattler. They like some of what they saw. They don't like some of what they saw. Like any objective football fan who watched Spencer Rattler last year would say. But and the number 3 quarterback in the building right now is Ben DiNucci, right? Now, Ben DiNucci is like the mentor type. He could be the Kellen Moore of what Kellen Moore was when he was a quarterback on the Cowboys bench, maybe, but that makes him your number 3 at best. So either way, the Saints have got to bring in a quarterback to compete with Spencer Rattler, and maybe Rattler's your quarterback, and maybe the guy you bring in is the quarterback. So that gives you 2 choices. You're either drafting a guy or you go and get a quarterback in free agency. I do not believe, although I think the Saints obviously know more about Derek Carr's injury at this point than we do. I do not believe, based on what we've heard, and we can talk about Derek Carr at length if you want to, but I do not believe the Saints can count on Derek Carr being a significant part and maybe not any part of this team this season at this point based on what we know. So I do think there's another quarterback in the equation. Now, the option is if they really don't like any of these quarterbacks and they want to build everywhere else, they could go sign Teddy Bridgewater or one of the free agents that's out there. The pickings are slim, I will tell you that, Jim. But if you want to go get Easton Stick, who Kellen Moore did coach with the Chargers to compete with Rattler and probably start Rattler, you can do that. It would seem more likely that you're going to get a guy in the draft, and it does not have to be at 9, that will at least compete with Rattler, because the only way to get to a Super Bowl is to find a quarterback, and the best way to find a quarterback is to take a shot at a few guys, because there's no guarantee anybody's going to work out. So that's where we stand at quarterback. I do think there's going to be another quarterback in the building, but you got options in there. It could be any of those 8 guys we talk about in the draft, or it could be any of the slim pickings in free agency.
You're using the phrase, what we know now. What do we know? Like, what do we know? I haven't heard a single peep officially from the Saints or the Derek Carr camp. What do we know?
Well, look, we do know from the beginning of this offseason, okay, Super Bowl week, and this is just the intrigue of it. Super Bowl week, and I know you were everywhere too.
Yeah.
Between the four of us in our sports department, we were everywhere. And the one thing that struck all of us independently was that we saw 40 different Saints players at 40 different locations. And the one guy we never saw Super Bowl week was Derek Carr. And
That's
that
true.
struck us as unusual that the quarterback of the host team wasn't even, I don't even know if he was in town. I didn't read up on it later.
No, he wasn't in town, actually. He was at some other convention or something.
It struck us as very unusual. And look, the way it struck us, and I don't know if this is right, and you said that from the beginning, is we really don't know the truth. And that's part of the fun and part of the stupidness of all of it. It struck us as, you know what? I feel like some hurt feelings are involved in all of this. Derek Carr, I'm guessing in his professional life, has never dealt with the kind of hatred might be the right word that he's gotten in New Orleans, the kind of dislike, the kind of anti-Carrism. I'm guessing he hasn't seen that before. You could tell he felt it. And I take this as, look, I was at the Packer game when he had supposedly this injury that in theory has happened. And it's kind of ironic because, look, the Saints were 2-0 at the time and they had a big lead when he got hurt.
Yeah.
It really was the turning point in the Carr era. And now it's the turning point again now. It would sure seem that what he has allowed to come out, which he has not disputed, is...
He hasn't affirmed it either.
He has not, but look, if somebody's saying something about me, you're gonna go out there, and the Saints don't have any reason to not say anything. If it's wrong, it sure seems like he's had ample opportunity to say this is wrong. And I do feel like he would protect his own brand enough to say it was wrong. It was wrong. Again, you are 100% right when you say we do not really know. I'm just basing it on evidence that I have now. And the evidence I have now points to me to a quarterback that really doesn't want to be here. And if that injury is true, and he does require surgery, he's not going to be part of this team. I think based on what we know, and the Saints know more than us, but based on what we know, it sure seems like 2025 is going to be a Derek Carr-less season in New Orleans. Now, could he come back and play for the team? Maybe. At this
I ain't buying it.
I would put the odds on that at somewhere between 10 and 20%.
Look, I think that all these people are saying what Saints fans want to hear, like, yay, Carr is gone. But it's just like being assumed Carr is gone.
Something about that?
No, I think he's just sitting back. Why does he have to say anything? He's never said anything about anything. That's not his MO to say anything. Let's keep it positive, brother. That's what he does. He doesn't talk about anything. And I think all this crap is coming from the Saints. I really do. That's what makes the most sense. And Carr just like he's not saying anything. I mean, he doesn't have to be here for voluntary workouts. He's not going to be here. He's getting paid to be when he has to be here. I think he's going to be here.
Oh, he's getting paid, period. Yeah.
Right. So when he has to be here, I think he's going to be here. And barring something strange coming up soon, which could happen.
Thing is just made up?
Completely made up.
Wow.
Yes.
I don't think that, but it's
I have not seen a damn thing except for reports. And like all these reporters have never been wrong before. They could be getting this from anywhere. People can throw out Sean Payton was famous for just throwing out whatever information. I'm not saying he would go this far. I'm not saying he would this before. I'm not saying he would go this far.
Pretty large. I can't look. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of like this guy's going to start and he doesn't. I have a shoulder injury that might require surgery. His agent is not going to refute that. He's not going to refute that. Like, yes, is it possible? Of course. I think there's too much smoke to not have something burning. Oh,
there's a lot of smoke. And I will say this, and here's how I started this show. Okay, before you were on. And you know me, I've always talked about this. I don't necessarily believe reports. I don't believe them. And nothing against Nick or Ian Rappaport or Diana Rossini or whatever. A lot of times they're true, but sometimes they're not true. And you know what? When they're not true, no one comes back. I do, which is not often, but I'm just saying, if I'm wrong about something, I'll tell you I'm wrong. I fess up. I own it. So many people don't, Doug. So many people don't tell you when they're wrong, and people just forget when they're wrong because it doesn't matter. Hold on. Yeah. So where I'm going with this is this. You know me. I like to follow the money. And in this case, the money and the reports are backing each other up as I go to the odds on whom the Saints will draft with their first pick according to DraftKings. And it's now basically even money that the Saints will, it's 50-50 that the Saints will take a quarterback with the first pick of their first pick, whatever that may be, whether it's 9 or they trade up or trade down, it doesn't make a difference. This is what the odds on what the Saints will do when they make their first pick in this draft. And it's saying that it's quarterback. At least that's even money. If you look at the other picks, defensive line plus 400, cornerbacks completely changed. That's why we're talking about some of the other picks from before. So it looks like it's quarterback, or there's going to be some weird pick if Campbell falls or Membu falls, maybe. I don't know.
Well,
but the money tells you it's quarterback.
Can I call a quick 20?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Look at those 8 positions. Literally, Saints have 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. If they took any of those 8 positions, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that's
true.
What makes this draft fun. It's not whatever year, what was that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the Olave Penning one, we knew it was wide receiver or tackle, and then they make the trade and they get one of each. The year it was Brazil, they needed defensive tackle. They took a defensive tackle. This year, that is literally where the Saints board is right now. And I'm not talking about the odds. I'm talking about the positions. Okay, none of those would surprise me. All of the above. And to me, that's what makes it all fun.
Well,
right
and one thing, so following the money, it's a double-edged sword or a two-sided coin, whatever you want to call it, because at the same time, while it's even money that the Saints take a quarterback with their first pick of the draft, it's also even money that they don't. So, I mean, if you took the field, if it's minus 110 for quarterback, that means it's minus 110 for not a quarterback, if you could actually do this. So I don't know. It's just,
but the odds, you know this, the odds are not based on reality. The odds are based on what they believe people will bet. And all of the dialogue is about quarterbacks, so they make quarterbacks the favorite. That doesn't necessarily mean there's someone placing the odds.
Fair enough.
Think they're going to take a quarterback. It's someone placing the odds where they think they get half the money on both sides.
No, that's absolutely true. By the way, there are tons of comments in the queue. I'll show one here and there, but mostly I'm going to save most of the comments for when, we have a short time with Doug this morning. I will show some of them, like Terrence, my boy Terrence. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Terrence says, don't draft a quarterback no matter what. And then there are other people that say, please draft a quarterback.
Yeah, draft a quarterback no matter what. I don't get that.
It just goes to show you like where who that's minds are. They're all over the place. And I think no matter what happens on draft night, next Thursday night with the first round pick, people are going to be glued to their, hopefully, to the live show on NOLA.com.
We hope it too. Look, I think the people who are saying don't draft a quarterback no matter what, I'm guessing those are huge Spencer Rattler people. And that's fine.
Some of them.
And look, I will say this too. Like, if you think Spencer Rattler should be the quarterback, that doesn't mean drafting a quarterback is a problem, especially if it's not the first round. First of all, you got to get him a backup, which right now there is not a backup in the building. We don't know about Derek Carr, and I'm positive the other guys are not backups. So if nothing else, you got to get him a backup. And the other thing is, if you get him competition, let's just say you go get Jalen Milroe in round 2. If Spencer Rattler is going to be the quarterback, he's got to beat somebody out. Nobody's going to anoint him and give him a job. He's got to win that job. So if you're a Rattler guy, you should not be afraid of any competition. Bring him in because Rattler's better, if that's what you believe. But either way, the Saints have somebody else is coming into that quarterback room. That's the one thing I would bet on. Now that somebody else might be Teddy Bridgewater, but somebody else is coming into that quarterback room. I am positive that Kellen Moore is not going to look at Jake Hader and go, all right, this guy's my number 2 at best.
No.
I mean, at worst. This guy I can roll with. He is not going to say that. So he has got to bring somebody in, even if it's Kyle McCord in round 3. Like, I'm not saying that's who it's going to be, Jim. Don't make faces at me. I'm saying somebody else is coming into that room.
My dude, Who Dat Daddy says, here you go. My hope is that we draft Rattler on offensive line and give him a fighting chance.
And that's very look, you said Will Campbell. I think Will Campbell is absolutely on the table in the first round.
It's going to be hard, as Ray Barra says he would go for Milroe in this offense. I'm going to get to Milroe in just a minute because I have lots of thoughts and I've changed my opinion on Milroe over the last few weeks, and I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. But to me, if Membu or Campbell are there when the Saints pick, I just don't know how this team passes up on. Now, I get it. If those two guys are gone, you don't want to reach for a tackle. Maybe you trade back, whatever. I get it. I completely understand. But if one of those two guys is there, there's no question that's the biggest need. I don't care what anybody says. That is the biggest need for the team, and I don't know how you pass that up if one of those guys is there.
Yeah, and look, you said Trevor Penning. There is also possibilities. Look, Tali Fuaga could move inside. Will Campbell, in theory, can play inside. That does not mean you're
maybe Trevor Penning
up on Penning. Look, here's the fact: you need 8 offensive linemen. And last year they went into the season with 3.
Right.
And the hopes Trevor Penning could be 4. And it played out like you would expect for a team with no offensive line. So draft an offensive line absolutely would work at 1. But look, here's to me, Jim, because I don't know if you're going to ask me this, but I want to bring it up. To me, I have never thought Shedeur Sanders would be available at 9. I have never thought that at any point beginning in November is that Shedeur Sanders will be available at 9. I think he's gone. So I don't think he's part of the argument for what the Saints should do. To me, honestly, what the Saints draft is the fulcrum of this draft, the single player that you have to make a decision on in this draft before you really see how the Saints are going to lay out is Jaxson Dart, right? If the Saints are looking for a quarterback, which they certainly could be, if Jaxson Dart is your guy, it is possible you go get him at 9. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's a lot of people nationally saying that. If it's not Jaxson Dart, then all of a sudden it opens up everything. But I think the discussion right now starts with him. Again, I don't think there's a great chance they do that, but it's certainly a possibility. I saw Todd McShay go on and on about Jaxson Dart and how he fits the Saints. Look, he's the exact same size as Jalen Hurts was coming out of college. I mean, they're 6'1", 223 and 6'2", 222. Like, they're the same size. They have similar ability. Jaxson Dart was number 1 in America in passing efficiency. In Jalen Hurts' class, Hurts was number 2 in America in passing efficiency behind Joe Burrow. They have a lot of similarities. And obviously, Kellen Moore had spectacular success with Jalen Hurts. So is Jaxson Dart his Jalen Hurts for the Saints? That's where you start. My guess is no, but I do think that's where the argument starts for what the Saints do in round 1. Does that make sense?
You want to know what my hot take of this draft? I have a number 1 surprise for draft night. Here it is. You ready?
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders doesn't get drafted in the first round.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that's totally. I think there's zero.
Will you come on and?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And when he goes 4, what are you going to say?
Oh, I'm going to say Doug was right.
It's quarterbacks. It's quarterbacks.
Yeah, I said about 3 weeks ago.
12.
I said about 3 weeks ago.
Nobody thought Bo Nix was going in the first round.
You're right. This is a completely different draft. Completely different draft. Shedeur Sanders, even Cam Ward, Jaxson Dart, Tyler Shough, none of these guys are as good as any of the top 6 quarterbacks that won last year's draft.
That's not what happens every year at the draft. Quarterbacks go higher than they should.
This is a different draft.
That happen in a perfect world? Obviously not. But every year, quarterbacks rise. And then the next year, people say, no way Bo Nix goes in the first. And then some smart people say, have you watched the draft for the last 30 years? This is what happens. There's no way. I would, you know what? We could.
David Noah doesn't think he goes top 10.
I think Shedeur is gone by the time the Saints pick.
I reposted one of our favorite odds makers. Well, not odds makers, I guess analysts, betting analysts is what I'm going to call him. Adam Chernoff. We have him on the show probably twice a year. He is fantastic. He's one of the top betting analysts out there. He knows what he's talking about. So anyway, what he's been talking about this week is draft odds and things that he's bet on. Shedeur Sanders' numbers now over 8.5, which means that he's going to be drafted after pick 8, has now risen to -400. That means it's almost, the odds makers think it's almost a certainty he will be available when the Saints pick. Okay. And so then you got to go to what are the odds the Saints would take Shedeur Sanders. I'm going to go to all this. I got to be honest. I don't know that I have an opinion on whether Shedeur Sanders or Jaxson Dart's better because I don't think either one of them is an NFL quarterback. I got to be honest.
Really?
I really don't think that either one of those guys, I think they'll each get a chance to start at some point in the NFL because they're going to be drafted that high. I just don't think they're long-term. Either one of them is an NFL quarterback. Okay. But all that being said, the money is saying that while the Saints are going to take a quarterback, it's 50-50. It's also getting up there that Shedeur Sanders is going to start dropping like a stone in this draft.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, there's a reason why Dion says that black and gold looks good on Shedeur because he knows he's dropping, he's dropping.
Yes. There's no doubt he's playing. But look, there are bad teams that make bad decisions. And even if you believe that, even if you believe he's not a starting quarterback, it happens every year. And look, I will say this, Sean Payton's ego in this case worked spectacularly well for him.
You're right.
Because everyone in America said Bo Nix is not a starting quarterback and that he won't go in round one. And Sean Payton said, you know what? I think he is. And Sean Payton took him at 12, which drew enormous criticism immediately after the draft. And guess what? It sure looks like Sean Payton was right. So we'll see. Look, again, this is what makes it all fun. And I have no problems being wrong, and I'm wrong all the time. And I have no problems admitting it. But I think Shedeur is gone when the Saints pick. And for some reason, I have nothing to base this on because we got to know
none of us do.
Era, and the Dennis Allen era was not really different. So you could make intelligent.
It was different. They didn't win.
You can make it. Yeah, no, right. I meant in their draft predictability, it was not different. Like we got to the last. I don't know, it was like an 8-year stretch where you could almost get, Sheldon Rankins, everyone predicted Sheldon Rankins that would get picked. Like with this pick, I don't know. And I love.
Well, it's starting, all the predictions are now starting to go quarterback. So even though it's 50-50 odds wise.
Because of what happened.
Yeah, but if you go by mock drafts, it's way more than.
Yes, that's believe Derek Carr is not going to be playing quarterback. And people, look, even if Rattler's your guy, you cannot go into training camp with last year's 5th rounder as your only NFL caliber quarterback.
They wouldn't do that.
Crazy. Yeah, no, they won't do that. And so that's why they're bringing in somebody.
Somebody will be here, whether it's a draft pick or Carr is here, or Derek Carr is here, and all this is.
I think that's the least likely possibility, but it's absolutely on the table.
I think it's the most likely. Anyway, we got some. I do want to show a couple comments just to show you. We talk about the widespread range of who dat thinking this year. That's why Thursday is going to be so fun because not just me. I'm probably going to be shocked too, and I'll be here on live internet TV, whatever you want to call it, with my surprisedness. But here's the who dat fans: David Nola, Dart will go ahead of Sanders. Ray Barra, Sanders doesn't fit this offense.
We don't know what this offense looks like.
You're right. JC says.
We don't know what this offense looks like. Kellen Moore has run vastly different offenses at
That's
3
true.
stops. Not vastly different, but different.
Pretty different.
And I will say this, though. The offense that he ran in Philadelphia absolutely fits his current offensive line because they are run-blocking monsters. And in theory, that offense fits what Jaxson Dart does.
Wouldn't you say Shedeur is a little bit like Dak Prescott in a way?
A little
Dak's
bit.
Probably a little bit more mobile. Anybody's more mobile. Shedeur Sanders is not mobile at all. So,
no, but Shedeur Sanders is not a bad athlete, and he escapes pressure well.
I'm not saying he's not a bad athlete. By no means am I saying that. I'm just saying one thing that worries me about Shedeur Sanders is I don't know how much they weren't very good in college. Okay, that team just wasn't that great. It was okay. But how much was he helped by having Travis Hunter, who was like the best athlete in college football last year?
Or you can say how much was he hurt by having one of the worst offensive lines in major college football. I will say this, though. If you're running the RPO-based offense that the Eagles ran, Shedeur Sanders does not fit great into that offense. But you also hope Kellen Moore is a good enough offensive coach that he can build an offense around talented guys, which is why all of those offensive weapons are on the table because the Saints need offensive weapons. So the secret to the Eagles' success, and Jalen Hurts was great this past season, throughout the season and in the Super Bowl, and the running was a big part of that. He was also helped by having Saquon Barkley and a spectacular set of wide receivers. So winning with great weapons and a solid offensive line winning with great weapons is also part of it. I do think, look, if you're going to run the Eagles offense, Jaxson Dart looks like he would be a solid fit for what that offense does.
Maybe. Mally Mal says, I'm being blasphemous. Shedeur's going in the first round. Who Dat Daddy says, I say draft to a line of 9, then try to trade with Philly, one of our 3rd and 4th picks, to come back and take.
Oh, and I would not trade with Philly just because I think you lose that trade. That is the best organization right now when it comes to fleecing other teams. I would just anything Philly wants to do, I'd say, you know what, we're probably going to pass on that. But I think offensive line's absolutely on the table, and you can. This sounds bad. Never go wrong, but and look, they've been good. Penning, maybe not, but look, Fuaga looks like a terrific pick. Ruiz was a terrific pick. Eric McCoy is going to go down as one of the great
phenomenal
picks.
Yes,
like they've been good when they've invested in offensive line early. Even going back to Ramczyk, the knee problem, notwithstanding, was a great pick. And that is not a bad way to go.
That's why people always get all over Luma. Like, we're going to draft another lineman in the first round. They never work out. I'm like, never work out. Have you paid attention? Yeah. The first 2 rounds, you go back, it's pretty good ratio that the Saints have had.
Yeah.
My friend Robbie,
you got to have it. You can't win without it. When the Saints have been good, the offensive line has been good. When the Saints have been bad, the offensive line's been bad. I mean, it's not that complicated.
No doubt about it. My friend Robbie Otan says, take Jaxson Dart. Big Sean says he agrees with you. I think he just agrees with you because you don't necessarily agree with me, and Big Sean never agrees with me, but I love him to death. David wants to draft Milroe, and this leads me into our next topic here.
David's 100% on the money.
Yeah, look. He says, let me show you one more time. He says he has issues with accuracy. I know, but his floor with leadership and athleticism is worth the gamble.
Leadership is worth the gamble. I'm sorry. I was reading too fast. I thought you said the leadership is in question. That part is not.
I'm going to tell you why I've changed my opinion on Jalen Milroe over the past few weeks. I was saying probably a month or so ago, I just didn't think that I talk about all these quarterbacks. Cam Ward's the only one I think has a legitimate chance of being an NFL quarterback. However, Jalen Milroe is intriguing for multiple reasons. Because if they were to draft Jalen Milroe and at least try him out at quarterback, and all these things about Derek Carr are true, okay, and they try Jalen Milroe out and he doesn't work and they're rebuilding anyway, at worst, if he doesn't work out at quarterback, you could probably, I don't even say probably, I think you can almost definitely turn him into a Taysom Hill and go for quarterback again next year. But then Jalen Milroe is still a huge part of your team offensively if he doesn't work out at quarterback, which is why I'm kind of for drafting Milroe. Maybe he's moving up the chart. You'd probably have to draft him at 40 now instead of waiting to the 3rd round. So I'm kind of buying in now on Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, look, I've been on Milroe. Honestly, I've liked him a lot since the LSU game for what he did. Look, a lot of what makes Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, look, in deep diving on Jaxson Dart, I've looked at and watched and studied Jalen Hurts a lot because, like I said, they are the exact same size. Now, Jalen Hurts is different because he's one of the strongest players, like his squats and his bench press. He's crazy strong for a guy his size. But he and Jaxson Dart are super similar size. But here's what I don't get looking back at Jalen Hurts, and it's how much the NFL has changed in the last 5 years.
Right.
Jalen Hurts was a spectacular running quarterback in college football, showed all the things he did running RPOs. He also had a passing efficiency, college football uses a different number, of over 190. He was the second best passing efficiency quarterback in college football behind only Joe Burrow, who's a pretty good football player. And in fact, his passing efficiency numbers and Dart's passing efficiency numbers are super similar. And they both got better in the same way. The difference is back then, way back in 2020, the NFL viewed running quarterbacks or quarterbacks who ran first in such a different way.
That's
that
true.
Jalen Hurts was the 53rd player picked in the draft. And if you go back and look at his numbers, if Jalen Hurts had done the same thing in college last year, he might be a top 5 pick this year because of how quarterbacks are now evaluated differently. That's the one thing that struck me just as a evolution of football thing that I found fascinating. Jalen Hurts is still not a spectacular decision-making, passing quarterback, right? His one big mistake in the Super Bowl was throwing an interception. But the fact is he's also the Super Bowl MVP. And he's, without question, one of the 10 best quarterbacks in football. And he still has those knocks on his old school quarterback pedigree, if that makes sense. So when I hear Milroe getting knocked for the old school quarterback pedigree things, it's like, okay, those are the same things people said about Jalen Hurts. Now, Milroe has not been Jalen Hurts to this point in his career. Jalen Hurts was a better passer in his final year of college than Jalen Milroe was in his final year of college. So he's not where Hurts was then. But look, he's a spectacular running quarterback.
He's at least as good as Anthony Richardson, right?
Yeah, I think he's far better than Anthony.
So do I.
And the one thing in his game that you cannot doubt is that he's got a gun and he throws a very accurate, solid long ball. It's really it's the short and intermediate he needs working on. But all the RPO stuff, I call it RRO stuff, because it's all the run options where he's either keeping or handing off, all that stuff and deep balls, he is already there. It's teaching him the rest. And I know the rest is a majority of what you do at quarterback. But I think Jalen Milroe is a nice package. And when I talk about bringing somebody in to compete with Spencer Rattler, I think he is a great option for a guy.
Well, he wouldn't be competing if they draft him high. He ain't gonna be competing. He's gonna win.
I actually think he would be, because you take him in a second and you'd have Rattler and you'd have two guys that both need work. You'd let them go to training camp. I don't think either one of them are guaranteed to be an NFL starting quarterback, certainly not right away. And I think you would have legitimate competition and you'd have two guys that could hopefully make each other better. I like Milroe a lot. And like I said, I have since the LSU game, and I know the flaws in his game, but I also know there are very few guys with his upside. And look, I mean, you're in fantasy leagues with me. The one thing I'm always betting on is upside. I never want the safe, high floor guys. I want the guy who might win me a league. And Jalen Milroe's got the ability that he could win you a league if all goes right. And like all the personality things, he's an A+. So you've got a nice package of tools. Ricardo says this because we talk about Milroe a lot, and I don't want to steal this from Ricardo. He says, there's not an NFL coach in America going, oh, yeah, I can't work with that skill set.
Yeah,
there's nothing I can do with that.
That's
true.
What
I mean? You look at him and say, oh, my God, there is so much to work with.
Yeah, this says the guy who drafted Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz last year. Not this year. Last year.
Yes.
Last year.
And look, Cruz right now has not worked out, but Skeens
most certainly has.
Leagues, right? Yeah. Skeens won 2 leagues. Cruz was not yet. But anyway, yes.
There is a comment out there that, look, again, I'm not showing all these comments, and I'm going to come back. A lot of these I'm going to come back to in 5 or 10 minutes when
there's people hating on me, don't show them.
No, they hate on me. They're not. Nobody's hating on you. They love to hate on me.
Do, right? What's up when I first took this job? They put like "Happy Birthday, Sports Director Doug Mouton" on the Channel 4 Facebook page, right? And there were like 400 comments, and one of them
you can't read that stuff, man.
I know. Well, I haven't since. One of them was like, "That guy's an idiot," and like the other 399, I have no idea what they said, but that guy's an idiot. Like, that ruined my day on my birthday. I'm
going to tell you real quickly. I'm not going to get into the weeds too much, but let's just say that I said something on social media that a lot of people didn't like a couple days ago, and you can go find it if you want. But I hardly ever get into. I made the mistake of responding to a response, which I hardly ever do. And it started this crap storm. And I'm like, I have to just now, when I have a notification, I click that I have the notification. I don't read it and which is what I normally do anyway.
And I hate to tell that to people because they get mad at me. But
sometimes you have to.
Christian Clark, he's now in Dallas. He was a Pelicans beat writer. Christian and I were talking with him. He was talking about something he had posted that got a ton of backlash on Twitter. And I said, yeah, I don't read any of the comments on Twitter. And he said, wait, what? And I said, I can't, Christian. If I read them and there's one that's like hate-filled towards me, like I'm not going to be able to
When they get personal, that's when it bothers me. Like, okay, like most of the people in here, not everybody, but most of the people in the comments here are part of the quote unquote Dattitude family. I don't mind when they give me grief because we have a mutual respect for each other, even if we don't agree with each other. But I'm still gonna call you out if I don't agree with you.
I'm totally okay with that. It's just, I guess it's the tone. Look, the tone of social media is so horrible most of the time.
Yeah. We get over that. But this comment in particular from Mal, I am just repeating the talking point that Sanders is a statue. It proves that I haven't watched any of his games. You think I haven't watched any of Shedeur Sanders games? Otherwise, you think I haven't watched Colorado football? Exactly. It's impossible unless you just don't watch football. Unless I was feeding the pigeons on Saturday, which I am not, it would be impossible not to watch any Shedeur Sanders games. But how it just highlights of him not being mobile, confirmation bias at its finest. How about this? He has rushed. How many times do you think he's rushed the ball? And that, of course, this includes sacks in college, whatever. But still, I'm going to prove a point here. How many times do you think Shedeur Sanders has rushed the ball in his college career, Doug?
You're talking to me?
Yeah, guess.
I don't ever remember him running for first downs.
It's actually, he's actually rushed the ball way more than most people would have expected.
Really?
A lot of those, again, are sacks, but 399 times in his 4-year career. You want to guess how many yards he has?
Yeah, negative.
Close.
Yeah,
29.
Yeah, because
29 yards.
Well, I will say this: look, the one knock on Shedeur Sanders isn't that he's a statue; it's that he holds the ball too long. And it's the same knock on Cam Ward: is that quarterbacks now, especially in the Mahomes era, they all want to be Mahomes, and you can get away with that in college, and you can't get away with that in the NFL. Look, Drew Brees in New Orleans is conditioned to the quickest delivery in the NFL. Drew Brees got rid of the ball because he understood who he was. The one knock on Sanders and Cam Ward is that they have. In fact, they're in the release time. Neither one of them were in the top 100 quarterbacks in college football in getting rid of the ball quickly. They both held the ball, and both have acknowledged that's something they got to work on and get better at in the NFL. And that is an incredibly fixable thing. Josh Allen was one of the worst in the NFL at holding the ball too long in his rookie season. That has drastically come down to the point that now he's the NFL's MVP. So that's a fixable problem. But Shedeur, being a statue's not been the problem. It's been dancing too long and holding the ball too long. But that's a fixable problem. And I think among the negatives, it's like I talk about the negatives to Milroe, and I'm okay with those negatives. I'm okay with the negatives to Shedeur. I'm a huge Shedeur fan. I think
Shedeur Sanders is a sack
play in the NFL and will be a really good NFL quarterback. I believe that.
He took 17 sacks in his final 4 games of his college career
When
he played anyone that was worth anything. He took no sacks out the wazoo.
Knock on him that he held the ball too long. No.
How many times would he get sacked with this O-line?
What I'm saying is that's a fixable problem. Maybe not fixable in one training camp, but because Josh Allen took him a couple of years to get better at that. But I think that is fixable over time. And Cam Ward has the exact same knock on him. He was not in the top 100 quarterbacks in delivery time either. And in the NFL, when there's guys like Chase Young chasing you, you cannot get away with that.
Look, I get why people want Shedeur Sanders. Most people want Shedeur Sanders simply because they don't want Derek Carr. I mean, that's why most people want Shedeur Sanders.
I'm sure there's some of that.
But
I think there's some of that with Rattler too.
He shifts well in the pocket, but he is not a runner.
I would agree with that.
Okay, well, I don't agree with it because I think, again, he played anybody worth a damn and he got sacked. What do you think would happen with this offensive line and Shedeur Sanders back there? He'd get sacked like 4 or 5 times a game on average.
But he got sacked because he held the ball too long, and that's a fixable problem. Yeah. He admitted he played too much hero ball. Like, he gets the criticism. That doesn't mean he's not necessarily – you don't snap your fingers and fix that problem because that's who he is as a quarterback right now.
His last name is Sanders. His last name is Sanders. That ain't changed. The going for the big play.
I don't agree.
Sean, you're 100% right. He is always looking for the big play, which is his biggest issue. That doesn't change. James Landry says Colorado had a terrible O-line. You think the Saints have a good one?
True too. Well,
you think the Saints have a good one?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Apathy says Vita Vea would eat Sanders alive. I mean,
he would, and that's a perfect example of a man that's the size of my first apartment and is unbelievably quick. Vita Vea is the reason Josh Allen had to change who he was as a quarterback because there are 100 Vita Veas in the NFL. There's one Vita Vea. But there's 100 guys like this close to him athletic-wise that you just can't dance around for 7 seconds because they're going to eat you alive. And I agree. Vita Vea, in fact, we were driving somewhere to an SEC game or to a Saints game. We were watching on the little TV in the car on the phone or watching a college game. And Vita Vea was playing, but the audio was bad. And every time they said Vita Vea, it sounded like Peter Pan. So we still call him Peter Pan in the –
Well, he does fly around.
Peter Pan is unbelievable as a player.
He's a phenomenal.
And that comment is the most on-point comment so far. Right. Peter Pan will eat him alive, but I also believe he has the ability to get better at that.
All right, I would say 2 quick things. And quick, you're just like me. Ask you any question. And if you ask me any question, the answer's probably not going to be quick. But anyway,
I know.
2 quick questions before we go. No, I love it.
I can't. You know what I mean? I'm usually timed so tight.
No, that's why you fit.
Getting on here, I can say whatever. I can talk about Peter Pan if I want.
You can talk about whatever the hell you want, Doug Mouton, for however long as you want. So I will say this. The last thing I'm going to ask you before we go off is just your thoughts very briefly on Joe Dumars. I don't even have a slide for it. Yeah. But before that, I'm going to force you, if you had 100 fake Doug Mouton bucks, which is what you like to ask me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It wouldn't be Doug Mouton bucks. It would be Jim Derry bucks.
So if you had to bet, I'm making you make a prediction. Okay. What do the Saints do? You can say trade the pick, who they pick, whatever. What is going to happen on Thursday night when the commissioner goes to the podium with the 9th pick of the 2025 NFL draft? The New Orleans Saints select
Will Campbell.
He's still going to be there now.
I do think if one of those 2 offensive linemen, Will Campbell or Membao, if one of them are there, I think that's where you start. And look, I don't have anything to base that on, other than I know what this team needs, and I agree with you. What they need most is an offensive line. I think that is your safest, smartest way to go. But I'll say this too: none of those weapons, the Tyler Warrens, the Ted McMillan, I'm not crazy about him. When I study, I'm not crazy about. I think in a thicker wide receiver draft, he would be a late first round, second round pick. I don't think he goes at 9. And I just don't know what's true about the quarterback.
None of us do.
I don't know. I do believe if they think Jaxson Dart's the guy, it'll be Jaxson Dart at 9. That you can't wait if you think he's the guy. You can't wait because of what happened with Bo Nix. You can't say, if you think he's your guy, you can't say, oh, we can get him in the 20s, trade back in. You can't count on that because somebody may jump and get him at 12 or 14 or whatever. So I think if he's your guy, so again, Jaxson Dart wouldn't surprise me. If somehow Shedeur fell, that wouldn't surprise me. None of those offensive weapons would surprise me. But I think the smartest and maybe the thing they did, and I say Will Campbell because I don't think Membao will be there.
Right.
And I think Will Campbell might be. And then I think it gives you options to move around an offensive line and you worry about quarterback in rounds. Look, you got 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. You got a lot to play with. But to get an elite offensive lineman, I love that.
I would love this move, by the way. If this happens, Brian Cabot, I would be all over this. Saints select with the 21st pick after trading back with Pittsburgh. They draft Tyler Booker. And I think Tyler Booker would be. Now, that's assuming you think Penning's still going to be good enough to be right tackle. However, if they don't get one of those 2 line, they don't get the Campbell or Membao, I'm all about it. Move back and
the only thing
I just don't see them do it.
Not been a team that trades.
No, they haven't.
And it's still Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland. They have never liked trading back. I'm not saying it's not the smart move. There have been often I thought it would be the smart move. I'm just basing that on what I've seen out of this draft team. They hate trading back. And the one thing I hope they don't do, because I think the biggest problem last year was not the injuries. The biggest problem was that they had no depth behind the injuries. And a big part of why they have no depth is because they have traded away so many 3rd, 4th, and 5th round draft picks to move up 5 spots. And they need to not do that in a year when they need 9 pieces. Don't be giving up picks to move up 3 spots. That's the one thing. Let's make 6 picks in those first 4 rounds. Hope you hit on 4 of them and then start building a team.
Yeah. Look, Ray says draft Campbell and trade up for Milroe. Okay, maybe you do that. All right. Last thing here. Well, I got one thing that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about
Joe
here,
Dumars,
but Joe Dumars. There's so many people, and very quickly again, I didn't even make a slide for this, but I just feel it that I should ask you your thoughts. There are so many people out there, including people I know, love, and trust and respect, that just don't like this Joe Dumars, and I actually like it. And I get that he had a rough end of tenure, I guess, the last 10 years or so. He hasn't been what he was earlier when he was the general manager of the year quite a while back. But I like this hire for the Pelicans. Somebody had to go. I don't know. I think Willie's going to stay. I think he's going to make it at least one more year. We'll see. But somebody had to go, and I just think that it had to be David Griffin, and I'm fine with bringing Joe Dumars in. I think maybe it'll re-energize this team a little bit.
Yeah, look, I think most of what people didn't like about it was the process. And look, the process wasn't great. They did not interview anybody else.
You're right.
They didn't look at anybody else. They had the guy they wanted, and they went with him. I'll say this. Look, Joe Dumars is my age and from Louisiana, so I've known about Joe Dumars for a long time. Like Joe Dumars, Louisiana legend. And look, I'll say this too. Joe Dumars did a great job when he was running the basketball operations in Detroit. The last 6 years weren't great, but in 14 years, his team went to the conference finals 6 times. In 23 years of New Orleans basketball since it came back, they have never been to the conference finals. He went there in 43% of the seasons that he was the GM. I know it ended poorly, and there's a lot of young people say it was a different era. Sure, it was 20 years ago that happened. I think he's a guy with a track record of being successful at this job. Could you have gone? Look, Oklahoma City right now is probably the smartest organization in the NBA for what they've been able to win, given their resources and given what they have to overcome by being in Oklahoma. Yeah. It is a brilliant organization. Could you have looked to the assistant in Oklahoma City? Of course. But Joe Dumars is a guy with a track record of winning. He is incredibly well respected around the NBA. Everybody likes Joe Dumars. I am 100% on board with Joe Dumars at this point. If we had seen other candidates and I could have studied him and seen who I liked, maybe I would have liked somebody better.
That was kind of the point, though. They didn't want you to see anyone else.
And look, Joe Dumars, though, has a track record. And at this point, it's done. So now I'm all in on Joe Dumars. I want him to have 100% success. And he's got some huge decisions to make. And the one thing about David Griffin, and I do think it was the end of the era, but David Griffin has left this cupboard infinitely better stocked than when he got here.
That is true.
There are absolutely pieces to build with Zion and Trey Murphy and DeJounte Murray.
I agree.
And Herb Jones. So
Misi's going to be, I think, a really good player.
Who's that?
I think Misi's going to be a really.
Misi at least will be a rotation.
That was a great pick there.
Yes, you have got some pieces to work with. Let's see what Joe Dumars can do.
Yeah,
the process. I get that. But at this point,
you know what's funny though, Doug?
On Joe Dumars. I'm not going to tweet on Joe Dumars. We actually made that decision because every time we did the story, because it was like 4 days of like Joe Dumars is this close. We would say, look, there's been a lot of criticism because of the process, and then once it happened, we said, you know what, we're going to stop talking about the criticism, and here's what Joe Dumars has done. Let's give the guy a chance to succeed. Yeah. Don't call him a failure without giving him a chance.
No, and one thing I think is funny is this, the organization, which let's don't fool anyone. The organization is the Saints and the Pelicans, but the organization got it completely wrong. And when they went and got Kellen Moore, and people didn't like the process of how long it took, and blah blah blah, and then they got this guy didn't want to come here, and blah blah blah. So the Pelicans said, you know what, screw it. We want Joe Dumars. We're not going to make a circus out of this. We're just going to go get the guy we want. And they don't like that either. So nobody in this town really likes anything right now.
Well, and actually, they didn't have a choice on Kellen Moore. They, by NFL rules.
I know. I completely agree. I'm just saying that they didn't like the process that was drawn out. They don't like the process that's not drawn out. I was
texting my friends saying, this is so embarrassing. Nobody wants to come
exactly.
in. Mike McCarthy dropped out because they didn't want him. So he dropped out just to save as much face as he could save. It wasn't because he thought that New Orleans was a bad organization.
No, it's literally absurd. I mean, the crap
and
that
look,
people...
it seems like now, though, I will say this. It seems like now people have turned to the positive on Kellen Moore. I hear nothing but people excited about Kellen Moore and what he can do long term.
No, I agree.
You're not hearing negative about Kellen Moore at this point, are you?
Oh, no. People are okay. You know, they'll hate Kellen Moore.
All negative.
Oh, no, the Kellen Moore hate.
Negative from month, right.
The Kellen Moore hate, that'll come in January.
Let it play out before we decide if it's negative.
Nobody. We live in that's the problem with social media. We live in a world where Gen Zers and even people my age have no patience anymore.
Yeah, don't blame it on Gen Zers because it's people our age are just as bad.
Well, they're getting just as bad because they're
just
paying
attention from the jump. No, we're terrible people across the board.
I'm blaming it on my kids. To hell with it. I don't give a damn. I blame everything on my son.
Bad. You're just as bad.
I'm blaming it on my kids. I like to blame it.
But you're still wrong. But anyway,
all right, Doug Mouton, what is on?
A huge mystery. We just sat here for 40 minutes, and that's so much more fun than when I was waiting for the Saints to take Brian Brzee. I had said on our pre-draft show, I think they'd take Brian Brzee. And then the whole draft, I'm like, all right, we're just waiting for Brian Brzee. Brian Brzee.
There it is.
Hey, this draft, no matter what happens at 9, I'm going to be surprised.
And last year I was actually right. And no, I just don't know how you can be right unless you go with what's been predicted and what's predicted actually happens. And I just don't see what's predicted actually happen. It's just too easy.
Yeah,
it's not going to be easy. It's too easy.
I agree. We always look for like the
it's going to be. You're going to be like.
Say this one thing. What? I never asked to do this, but we have a live draft preview special.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next.
Wednesday night on Channel 4. We're actually sending Ricardo to Green Bay to the draft. We're like Will Campbell will be there.
I went to Vegas a few years ago.
In Green Bay, we're going to be live at 6:30 with predictions where everything stands.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Profile locally is Barron Sorrell, defensive lineman from Texas, who we all think has a chance to be a really good NFL player.
Okay.
He's a Holy Cross guy from Texas. Yes. So that's 6:30 Wednesday night on Channel 4. That's our draft special.
What about 4th down and 4 on Sunday night? What are y'all playing?
Sunday night, yes. And this week, between the Zurich Classic and Joe Dumars and the draft coming up, Ricardo and I were talking last night. How the hell are we going to fit all this into one show? So anyway, we'll figure out.
It's not sweeps week, is it?
No, and we don't care about sweeps anymore, Jim.
Nobody cares about sweeps anymore.
No, we don't, because now we're logging streaming minutes, and I know. I mean, if a show drops and it has less than 20,000 streaming minutes, there's a problem. I just try to do what I do and hope it is okay.
Trust me. I understand that completely.
Yeah. Oh, I know you do.
Stuff that I never had to worry about before, I suddenly have to worry about. But again, I will say, I'm averaging more views. Averaging, not one show.
You're not just doing views, though. You're doing streaming minutes,
right? My average views per show is more than Derek and David Carr got on their first podcast. I'm just gonna say that. I'm just gonna say.
I think the average views of people driving by my house is more than Derek Carr's podcast.
All right, always fun.
I do not think Derek Carr is going to play a role in 20. If I had to make one bold,
so you saying that
bold because
there will not be a number 4.
He plays a down of football for the New Orleans Saints in 2025. That's where if you gave me $100 of Jim Derry bucks, I'm putting it on not one down.
You just made 85% of my audience. You made their Good Friday Great Friday. If they believe Doug Mouton, you made their Good Friday Great Friday, because I can tell you a vast majority of my audience, they don't want to keep it positive, brother, anymore.
I'm just trying to
his ass out of here.
That's what I think. That's not because I hate Derek Carr. That's just
what you think.
I don't think Carr's shoulder injury is on NFL.com without having fire to the smoke, period.
Yeah, well, we'll see if you are right. It won't be that long, because I can tell you that if they don't draft the quarterback in the first 2 rounds, there's going to be all kinds of questions. There's going to be outrage by who dat. I promise you.
Look, there's not a lot, but there are smart football people who think they're going to roll with Rattler. They don't really like the quarterbacks in the draft. They're going to roll with Rattler, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to be his backup. I do think somebody's coming in to be his backup. Teddy Bridgewater or Easton Stick. What college is Easton Stick from? I knew this offhand. You know why? Because it's North Dakota State. Teddy Bridgewater or Easton Stick are going to come in and be Spencer Rattler's backup. I think that's a possibility that's on the table.
Yeah. Well, we'll see who's right. I think, you know what?
I think they're going to draft a quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But in the realm of what's possible,
I think they're going to draft a quarterback, but I don't know when.
Than Derek Carr playing for the Saints this year.
I think they're going to draft a quarterback. I don't know when. I don't think it's going to be Shedeur Sanders. I don't think it's going to be in the first round. I don't think it's going to be Jaxson Dart, but I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again. And if I'm wrong, I'll say, y'all were right. I was wrong. I
don't think so. Could be.
I still got my Crow Po Boy sitting in the freezer right next to me. My Crow Po Boy has been sitting in this freezer for about a year. So we'll see who's right and who's wrong. Doug Mouton, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure we will talk somewhere, I don't know, early summer.
Draft.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
All right, Jim. Oh, by the way, last question, who's winning the Times-Picayune Fantasy Baseball League at the moment?
I don't know. I was too.
Wait, that's me. Oh, sorry about that.
I was too busy paying attention to my 11-1 week last week, and if I beat Triplet, if I follow 11-1 with beating Triplet the next week,
strong. Let me say this, right? Anybody knows Mike?
That would be a great week.
Beat writer. Mike Triplett is a strong fantasy baseball player. We started a head-to-head league, which head-to-head baseball is fun. It kind of plays out like fantasy football.
I'm enjoying it.
And on Sunday, it's like there's one start that's going to decide 4 categories every Sunday. Anyway, Triplet's strong. You beat Triplet in a good week.
And my goal this year is if I don't make the playoffs, obviously playoffs is goal number 1, but goal number 2 would be to beat Triplet twice in the same season. It would make my season. So we'll see.
Yeah, that would not make my season. If I don't get to the playoffs, it's a lost cause. But anyway,
playoffs
and in the Picayune League, it's me 1, Triplet 2 right now.
All right. We'll see what happens. Next time we have you on, we'll see if that's still the standings.
I know, right? I want to say it while it's true. Yeah.
All right. Enjoy Easter weekend before we absolutely all get no sleep next week.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Talk to you later, Doc.
Have a good one, Jim Derry.
All right, you too.
Later, bud.
Nobody needs coffee when Douglas Mouton is on the Dattitude podcast because we're very similar. We're all over the place. We haven't done. All right. We got some comments. I'm not going to show all of them. Some of them, if y'all are just dummies, you know what I think about dummies. Especially if you're not if you're a dummy and you're not a regular, yeah, you can fly off into hyperspace. You know who doesn't fly off into hyperspace? Evangeline Securities. They're always there. They don't fly anywhere. They're there. Poydras Street, Lafayette, whatever you want. We told you earlier, we'd let you know more about how they can help you figure out what your family-run or privately held business might be worth and whether it's time to sell. How do they do it, you ask? Well, thanks for asking. After their complimentary valuation of your company, if you decide to proceed, native New Orleanians Nick Braden. It's Friday. Spit it out, Derry. Native New Orleanians Nick Braden, Ron Hemelt, and the folks at Evangeline will begin an extensive auction process from among established private equity funds from around the world. And they'll maximize the return for the founder and his or her family. Evangeline Securities, the top producer on their platform, bar none. There are very few companies like them in this area, none with their dedication and success. How do people feel about Evangeline Securities? Well, imagine how you feel about Derek Carr and then make it the opposite. That's how people feel about Evangeline Securities. They are fully licensed. They're ready to serve you. So get in touch with Nick and Ron about what's really important. It ain't the number 9 pick. It ain't the number 40 pick. It ain't whether the Saints going to trade up, down, or Joe Dumars. What is really important? The rest of your life. You can find them at www.evangelinesecurities.com. Joe Hamilton, I so hope they draft Milroe now. What did we say that made you hope? I kind of hope they draft Milroe too. I think it would be fun. Again, like I said, if they draft Milroe, the reason why I feel differently, my mind has been opened up. My eyes have been opened up. Because if the Carr crap is true, 50-50. Of course, there's got to be some kind of truth in it somewhere, right? I think it's less than y'all think and more than I think. Somewhere in the middle, there is truth in there. Not as much as y'all think, though. However, all that being said, even if Carr does come back, whatever. If Jalen Milroe doesn't work out at quarterback, and you're in a rebuilding process anyway, and you got a new coach, then Jalen Milroe becomes the next Taysom Hill. Because I said this before, and someone asked earlier about Taysom Hill, and I don't know where it is now, and I'm sorry I can't find it. I can't remember who asked it. There's no guarantees on Taysom Hill. Okay. I don't see it. I don't see Taysom Hill at age 35 coming back from this devastating. This isn't your average knee injury, boys and girls. Now, if anybody can do it at his age, it's Taysom Hill, because he's one of the best athletes that's probably ever played for this team. But I don't see it. I think Taysom Hill's might have played his last down of football. I think it's a possibility. Not saying it's true. I think he'll try to come back, and if he tries hard enough, he'll probably come back in some capacity. Maybe he comes back for a little bit and realizes he can't do it, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just saying, if he's going to be gone, or if he's going to be gone in the near future, and the Saints draft Jalen Milroe, and if he works out at quarterback and he ends up being the quarterback in the future, great. You got him probably in the second round, phenomenal. You made him an accurate quarterback. He's all the athlete that Jalen Hurts is, and maybe then some. Great, wonderful. Bonus, plus, lanyard, whatever you want to call it. But if he doesn't turn out to be this number one quarterback, he can be Taysom Hill. There it is. JC said any Taysom Hill talent in this year's draft. Yeah, Jalen Milroe. I'll see. David Nola says he hears Will Campbell wanted. I hear all kinds of stuff, David. I mean, I hear what I hear. Look, I've said this. I've been saying this for 3 months now with all these mock drafts. And we're going to have a mock draft again a week from yesterday, next Thursday. Gabe Henderson, Zach Ewing, and I are going to have a first round mock draft. We're going to do it live on the air at 11 a.m. here on the show next Thursday. You won't want to miss it. It's going to be live. We're going to have 32 picks, and that's how we're going to do our mock draft. There have been approximately 2,479,291 mock drafts in the past 5 years. And you know how many of them have been right? That would be 0. So we can hear whatever we want to hear. 0 out of whatever number I just mentioned. I couldn't even kind of tell you that number again. Sean, do I think the Saints have too many chefs in the front office? No. I just don't think they've done a good enough job as of late. I think there's only one chef that matters. And most of y'all don't like him. You know who I'm talking about. Let's see what else we got here that we missed in the last 10 minutes. Who that thanks? Doug. I'm not showing this Golden King ridiculous stupid comment. Ray Barra says it's Milroe. What else we got here? David, yeah, Doug is one of the best around. That's what we love. Look, we got a great guest list this week. And the leading up to the draft. I wanted to make sure, a lot of times I don't get my guests until the day before. No, I wanted to show up draft week ahead of time. And I told you this already. Doug Mouton today. Mike Detillier. Y'all love when Mike D comes on here. Mike Detillier is coming on Monday, and he's going to give us his 2 cents. Now, I'm not going to keep him on. We usually talk for an hour and 15. I'm not doing that Monday. He's going to probably get in and get out and talk about 20 minutes and pick his brain, tell us what he thinks. I kind of know what he thinks, but I'm going to let him say what he thinks Monday, and he'll be gone. And then Wednesday, Eric Asher. And then I'll be on Eric Asher's show Monday. Apathy. If the Saints draft Milroe, Matt Moscona's got to come on. I'm sure I can make it happen. Apathy. If the Saints draft Jalen Milroe, I will have Matt Moscona on the show. I'll probably have Matt Moscona on the show anyway. We haven't had him on since right before the Super Bowl. Charles Mangus, what about signing Carson Wentz? I mean, look, anything's a possibility right now. Anything. There's nothing that's out of the realm of possibility right now. It's just not. I mean, think about all the things that can happen. You go ahead, throw them out there, Dattitude family. Name me something that could happen, or realistically, don't tell me the Saints could, I don't know, go sign Drew Brees out of retirement. Don't tell me something that's logistically possible. Okay? Tell me something that's possible. What would shock you next Thursday night? What would shock you? Nothing. There's very little that would shock me. Now, there might be some picks or whatever that I'm going to roll my eyes and go, you got to be kidding me. I'm just going to let it play out. I got to be honest. I'm sitting here wondering how I'm going to react, and I've done that. It's going to be a natural reaction. I have no idea how I'm going to react. I got to be all these rumors are probably also taken away from me going on a major rant. I'll save the rant for Dattitude. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. Earl's picks. You missed the first 20 minutes. How did everything go Wednesday with the wifey? So far, the surgery went fantastic. Thank you for asking. She's doing very well. She's on the other side of this wall here. Probably wishing I would lower my volume. I guess. She's doing pretty well. We get some results from the surgery next week, and we hope that goes as well. Thank you for asking. Who Dat Daddy loves to hear from Mike. Tyler Warren, David Robinson said, it's a larger, stronger version of Taysom Hill. Tyler Warren can't line up a quarterback. That's the one thing that Taysom Hill does that just people don't. I'm sorry. I'm not in Tyler Warren camp. If they get him, they draft him, fine. I'm going to go back and I'm going to throw this odds list up here again. These are odds from DraftKings, okay? As of this morning, odds on drafting a quarterback. Even money, minus 110 with the juice. So it's 50-50 according to the odds makers. The Saints will draft a quarterback with their first pick. So, let's go back to what I said, 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was trying to give you percentages. And I said, after all the math, I came out to 4%. Well, I got to up that, right? I don't necessarily agree with the odds makers. I don't think it's 50-50. But it's got to be more like 40% now, huh? That's a 10 times jump in a few weeks. And which is way above what I'd say 0.0 like 2 months ago. I mean, we just don't know. We don't know what's true and isn't true. I wish I knew what was true and isn't true. I know what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I told you about it in the open. If you missed the open, I'm having trouble falling in line with all of these rumors. All the rumors surrounding Derek Carr, all of his supposed quote unquote bum shoulder. Am I supposed to just fall in line with I'm telling you, I'm not falling in line with it. I'm not saying it's definitely not true. It just doesn't make sense. And all of y'all are just automatically, I'm not taking up for Derek Carr because I think he's handled this horribly. I think he's handled this as poor as someone can handle it. He's got this new podcast. The first thing I would do if I were Derek Carr, okay, is I would get on this podcast and I would say, whatever the truth is, I'd tell you what the truth is. Because I think all of the fuel, all of the fire, all of the rumors, all of the quote unquote sources, everything I've seen is leaning that the sources are someone inside, and I'm not going to say any names, but someone with a lot of clout, a lot of pull inside the building on Airline Drive, Saints Drive, whatever you want to call it. That's where I think the rumors are come, the quote unquote rumors. Maybe they aren't rumors, maybe they're true. But if I were Derek Carr, again, this is why I think he's handled this as horribly as someone can handle it. If you have a new podcast and you want people to actually watch this crap, then why wouldn't you get on and at least address the rumors and say yes or no? I do have shoulder issues. I am contemplating surgery, or it's not true. I don't know where it came from. Yes, I have had some shoulder issues in the past, but I don't have them currently, and I'm not contemplating surgery. Why wouldn't you just come out and say either one of those things on your own podcast? It doesn't make sense not to talk about it. Doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I just I have trouble not believing things that don't make sense. Lewis Jacobson said it would shock him if they trade the house for Cam Ward. Okay. That's not a likelihood by any means, but certainly a possibility. I'm with you, Lewis. I would probably be shocked if they did that as well, but not out of the question. William says, did Mouton even watch the games? Rattler cannot read defenses. Get real, Doug. Look. Y'all know what I think about Spencer Rattler, and I don't even necessarily agree, but I think you're missing what's being said here. I don't think Doug was advocating for anything. So don't come at my guest unless you're actually listening. I don't think that's what he said. I think what he said is what is a possibility of what the Saints are thinking. I've told you this before. I'm going to say it again. I said it on Monday's show. I said I couldn't believe I was saying this then. I probably can't believe I'm about to say what I'm going to say it again. I would rather this, if the Saints are not, if Carr's not coming back, I don't think you're going to get a quarterback in this draft that's going to make you competitive for the season. I just don't. Under no circumstance am I for drafting a quarterback. I don't think it's in the Saints' best interest at all to draft a quarterback in this draft, at least not in the first round. You want to go and get Milroe? Again, I'm more open to that. I think that makes more sense, whatever. I don't think Shedeur Sanders or Jaxson Dart is worth the 9th pick of the draft. I simply don't. So with that being said, and I'm certainly not for Aaron Rodgers. There's a apathy, or someone was asking about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers ain't coming here. Yes, I heard. We talked about it, that in the open as well. Oh, Earl's picks. Aaron Rodgers is not coming to New Orleans. So with all of the options that are out there right now, if the Carr stuff is true, I think what the Saints should do is, again, I know a lot of y'all probably aren't going to believe I'm going to say this, but I think the season's going to be a wash anyway. If the Carr stuff is all true, there ain't a quarterback in this draft that can help this team out of the hole that they're going to be in. And I don't see any veteran worth his smoke coming here that's available right now, that's worth anything. So with that being said, you know what? If the season's going to be a wash, all you Rattler lovers, let's just find out. I don't want to go 3-14 or 4-13, which is what I think would happen. But you know what? I'd love to be proven wrong. I still think that they got to build this team in the trenches. And who knows? Maybe people are right out there. Maybe people are right. Maybe if Spencer Rattler has a real offensive line and they go out and draft an offensive lineman in the first round, a Membu or a Campbell, or like we're talking, trade down and get Booker, I don't think it would turn Spencer Rattler into a pro quarterback, but I would love to be wrong. And you know what? At this point, I'd be willing to find out, because you can't use, this is the first time in 20 years that you've had a pick as high as number 9, or not quite 20 years, almost 20 years. You can't, in my opinion, use it on a quarterback that's not worth the first round draft pick. It doesn't make sense. Apathy says that's going to be painful to watch. You'd rather go drink a smoker's call from Tracy's. Sean wants to know, should they trade back? Yeah, they should, but they're not gonna. Earl's pick says, what about Kirk Cousins? Costs too much. You can't spend that kind of money. Who dat dad? Aaron Rodgers, too much of a diva. It's not just the diva. It's a circus. We don't need that circus here at all. All right. Again, we got plenty more to talk about on this subject coming up. If you got a comment to get in, you got about 5 minutes to get it in, because we're going to do man versus machine, and then I'm going to wrap up the show with my tribute to Ryan Ramczyk. And when I say it's the last word, I don't show any more comments when I get to the last word, because I told y'all, the only chance I get to have the last word. And guess what? There's some people out there, you're typing up stupid crap, and you know who you are. If you're typing in stupid comments, you don't get any word, because that's my right to not give you one. If you're a moron, you're a moron. I can't help you. If you say things if you say things in a respectful way and you disagree with me, or at least semi-respectful, I'm going to show it, and we can agree to disagree, like a lot of my regulars here. But especially if I don't know who you are and you're coming with all this crap out of blue, I choose not to show your comments. You're a moron. Time to move on. Again, we will have time for a couple more comments before I get to the last word. After we get to dun dun dun, man versus the machine. Gabe is not here today. He's got some things going on holiday week. But the good news is man and machine won on Tuesday night as he picked, what was it? It was an NBA game. He picked the Hawks to lose. I know that. Hence why they're here today. Oh, Lord, I'm forgetting. Anyway. Oh, the Magic. That's what it was. The Magic. Minus 5.5. It just shows you what happens when you get old. It just pops in your head. It's not. I actually clicked on the prediction that I have to read from Machine in a minute. But it just popped in my head. It's Magic minus 5.5 over the Hawks, and they walloped them. And so now the Heat get him tonight. His pick is Heat money line over the Hawks. And the machine agrees with him again. Can they win 2 in a row together? What does Grok say? And look, I got to be honest. I went to ChatGPT first. And ChatGPT is just not good for predictions. So they don't want to make a prediction. Apparently, whoever the designer of ChatGPT is not a gambling dude because they just don't want to talk about gambling. Grok has no problem with it. So I went to Grok again. And here's Grok's. Here's the machine saying why they agree with Gabe Henderson, who is today's man. Heat money line over the Hawks. While the Hawks have home court advantage and a potent offense when healthy, their defensive vulnerabilities and injury concerns, especially Okongwu's absence and young Bogdanovic's questionable status, tilt the scales toward Miami. The Heat's defensive discipline, healthier roster, and heroes scoring from form make them the slight favorite even on the road, like we saw Miami win by 49 in the Smoothie King Center last Friday. Grok didn't say that. I did because I was there, but whatever. Miami's ability to slow the game down, 20th in pace, counters Atlanta's high-speed attack, and their bench depth should help in a tight turnaround. Final score prediction, Miami Heat 112, Atlanta Hawks 108. There you have it. Man versus machine. Machine actually has a winning record, 3-2. Man, that's their first win of this new segment back here. All right. Last word before the last word. What we got here? Saint for life. Who dat? You late to the party? How good? Derek Carr needs a PR advisor. Sean, you are right. We don't always agree. We agree about half the time. Maybe a little more than that. Who dat, Daddy? You know what? Give the rat a line. He should be better. Can't be worse, my friend. Can't be worse. All right, for today's last word. What else would it be? Talking about Ryan Ramczyk. Bittersweet. Understand the whole thing. Couldn't play because of his knee. We knew this was going to happen. On Thursday, one of the last links to the Drew Brees era said goodbye to the Saints organization and the city of New Orleans. Of course, it's news none of us should be surprised by, and Ryan Ramczyk will always be welcome here. But it was a moment that probably made most of us just a little sad for a moment. As we head into NFL Draft Week, when we think about special classes in team history, it is impossible not to think of the class of 2017. Marshawn Lattimore, Marcus Williams, Alex Anzalone, Trey Henderson, and of course, Ryan Ramczyk, and the only one still wearing black and gold, Alvin Kamara. I hate to be selfish, but I will be honest. I will miss Ryan Ramczyk, the player, much more than I will miss Ryan Ramczyk, the person. That has a lot to do with the fact that Ryan Ramczyk was a pretty quiet dude. I didn't hardly know anything about him because, well, you don't often get to know all that much about offensive linemen. And maybe because he came from Wisconsin, and I'm guessing is living back up there once again. I don't really know what kind of guy he is, but I sure do know he was one hell of a right tackle. Ramczyk reminds us of what was and hopefully one day what can be again. an all-pro tackle in 2019 and named to the second team in 2018 and 2020. He was the anchor on the right side of the Saints line during the 4 straight seasons in which the team won NFC South titles. Ramczyk was the final pick of the first round of that 2017 draft. It was a pick the Saints got from New England, ironically enough, in exchange for Brandon Cooks, who is now back with the team at the same time Ramczyk is retiring. He started right away, taking over for an aging Zach Strief, who took over for Super Bowl right tackle John Stinchcomb. I mean, no offense when I say the following. All those names represent something totally different in terms of quality over the current starter at right tackle. And I get it. We don't need any reminders of how far removed we are from the old days. But Ramczyk leaving indeed renders a slap in the face of how far this team has fallen. And I don't just mean from perennially being a Super Bowl contender to back where we came from just a couple of decades ago. To sum it all up, that's why I'm so strongly for taking a tackle in this upcoming draft. I get the problem Saints have at other positions. I get no one likes Derek Carr, and the thought of him playing one more down for their favorite team is infuriating. But wouldn't it seem more logical to wait one more year for the quarterback of the future to find the Ryan Ramczyk of today? Does to me. Guess we'll find out soon enough. For now, I'll end with this. Thank you, Ryan Ramczyk, for being great and putting every ounce of effort you had into your job. You will be missed, and the Who Dat Nation and the Dattitude family appreciates the time you spent here. Good luck in your further endeavors. That is the last word. That's going to wrap it up for us on this Good Friday. I want to thank today's guest, Doug Mouton, and you. We hope you can join us again next on Monday, live at 11 a.m. Central or after the fact, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to be a member of the Dattitude family by clicking subscribe. Subscribe to that Dattitude YouTube page. Click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live. Again, Mike Detillier on Monday, Eric Asher on Wednesday, mock draft on Thursday morning, live draft coverage, 5 hours worth here on this same channel next Thursday night. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and many more. You can also find a replay of the show on NOLA.com/sports. Everyone have a wonderful, glorious Easter weekend. Spend it with the people you love. We will see you on Monday. Take care, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.